Boys jumping ship on James Robinson, tough. Somebody trade him away for a 4th-round pick.
Well, you should, right? I mean, why would you hold on to James Robinson at this point? Give me the upside on James Robinson.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. You think he's done?
He's done. Or he's
There's
done.
points on both sides to be made. I think that's a good discussion, dynasty discussion, actually. Matter of fact, let's talk about it on the show. Let's talk about it on the show. That's a dynasty question. Because we know this shit. You shouldn't be. Well, I've been seeing people draft him at FFPC, actually.
Yeah, somebody drafted him in this draft, like the 15th round.
So maybe it is. Maybe it's put it on the board. James Robinson.
James Robinson?
And we could talk about it with both redraft and dynasty.
I had some fire topics, and then you don't want James Robinson topic.
No, you can talk whatever you want. Honestly, I don't look at the list because I like to just wing it.
Let's just take a ride along the bay. We don't need to work, we can sit around and play. I've been waiting for so long to get away. Baby, don't hold back.
Experts mess up too.
All right. Let's go. Welcome to First and 15th, the only podcast that's trying to get you paid. I'm here with two-time FFPC champion AB. Alongside him is my guy, Dial the Machine. Guys, I want to talk about drafting. I finally got into my first redraft. I know all three of us are drafting now. One question that I think that's coming up with people in the Dynasty community, more casual fans, is why are we drafting so early? Can you guys talk about the advantages of drafting early versus waiting for the dust to settle and drafting closer towards the start of the season?
Well, it's two questions. I mean, why am I drafting so early? Because I'm addicted. Because I have a problem. No. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some advantages to be had. It really all depends on how accurate you are in player assessments and assessing the market. So
how accurate you think you are.
Exactly. How accurate you think you are.
How confident you are.
Exactly.
Get into the
exactly.
draft streets.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you feel, fairly confident, you feel like you got a good sense of where players are going, where they should be going, and what values can be had, then it's a great time to draft. For me personally, it really takes a draft for me to really settle in on certain players and really get a good sense of where I have players ranked and what tiers I have them in.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely,
what ADPs look like.
Exactly,
like current ADPs.
This year, I took it a little bit more upon myself to prep a little bit ahead of time before starting FFPC, and I think it's really paid off. So, the first couple of rounds, the board may shift a little bit, but for the most part, I think you have a good sense of who you're on and who you're not on right off the bat. So there's certain players that I'm going to be targeting, and then certain players that I'm going to be avoiding in the first couple of rounds. And in those mid rounds, it's really kind of who falls to you. Same thing. It's really one large tier with some players that you feel are potholes or traps, and some players that you feel are values and targets. But still, it's quite a large tier. To me, the advantage of drafting early now are really is the back half of the draft. Because I think there are a lot of players that their values really, don't reflect where I think their ADPs will be once all the dust settles and once people really kind of come to terms with certain running back situations. And there are a ton of examples out there. And I think it's, in the wide receiver, at the wide receiver position. I think it's at the running back position, a little bit in the tight end position. And, at least right now, quarterbacks are going so late as well. So I think that's another advantage to drafting now is that I can build a starting roster and still get an elite tight end. I mean, I drafted literally just before we came on, and I was able to get a Kyler Murray in the late 8th round. I want to say at 8-11.
Yeah, that's wild.
To be able to kind of, really draft a full roster and then have a potential elite tight end, I mean, QB1 is well within his range of outcomes. That's the advantage of drafting now. So
wait, so Abby, when was your first draft? Do you remember?
Nah.
Been that long?
Whatever the first day we could draft. Nah.
When they opened the gates.
I was running.
Can you say how many drafts you've been in?
It's been a couple weeks.
Okay, how many drafts? Do you mind saying?
A couple.
It's been more than a couple. It's been more than a couple in the last 2 days.
A few. However many.
Okay,
you define
fine.
a few.
That's fine.
Yeah, a few.
Me, as far as an advantage, I mean, for me, there's edges that can be had in any situation, any platform, any kind of timing. There's always edges. The trick or the goal is to figure out where those edges are. Early drafting, I do think there's edges. But I think the edge is the uncertainty. And I think it's kind of a race to get certain in the fantasy community so you can take advantage of these certainties, again, that you think or assume is certain, right?
Yeah.
So, me, like I was saying on the last show, the way I draft now, and by the way, I've done my first draft, so I have one in the hole. You know, I want to do more.
All right.
But these streets are dead, so nobody's
dry.
trying to draft or
Dry.
something. But anyway, it's another topic. But like I said last week, my strategy is more so not per se zero running back, but I would probably prioritize wide receivers over running backs because I feel like with all the ambiguity in backfields right now, there's going to be values on those late running backs because nobody really knows how it's going to turn out. Get closer to the season when everybody's more knowledgeable, everybody's more accurate, like the term you said, then people are going to start pushing up those running backs because they now know this running back is somebody I want to secure for my team. So I think that's where a big advantage is. If you play it right, you know, I think when you draft ambiguity, there's some people that have a little bit higher value in their ambiguity, if there's a way you can even measure that, than others. And I try to lean towards those, knowing that if they don't work out, I don't feel bad as far as me just cutting them.
Yeah. And let's just, a couple of examples. Like I think in the lab pod we talked about, maybe trying to avoid some of these rookies or trying to avoid what we assume is the handcuff, you know. And one of those examples was in the Cardinals' backfield.
Ingram.
Exactly. And so I was, right off the bat, I was just not a fan of Keontae Ingram's tape, not necessarily saying that he couldn't succeed in the league, but with the idea that if James Conner were to go down, I felt that they were going to bring him back
somebody,
in. So I didn't want to waste draft capital, particularly where he was going in the FFPC at that time, because it's kind of the shiny new toy. Rookies are kind of the sexy thing right now, especially coming out of dynasty drafts. So those players like that, I was trying to avoid taking them where they were taking. So, and at the same right, knowing how well Daryl Williams performed last year, started taking him late in drafts. And then sure enough, the following day he gets signed to the Cardinals. And so that's a guy now that we drafted in the 18th round, 17th round, that now has value and will probably end up in that kind of 13, 14 range where high price handcuffs go.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I also drafted Daryl Williams, whatever. We're gonna have that discussion again. But I drafted him too. But honestly, the reason I drafted him because I heard whispers that he was in New Orleans,
possibly the
and
Saints,
possibly going to sign him. So I was just like, let me get ahead of the curve. Let me just kind of stay ready with it. Turned out he signed with the Cardinals. Actually, it's almost a similar situation. If anything, Conner might have a higher injury history than Kamara, so it might actually work out a little bit better. So. Cool. Going back to Ingram, though, and this is on a dynasty thing, I like Ingram, the player. The problem with Ingram in a redraft for me is his likely opportunity was just low type of potential outcome because of, this guy was a 6th-round pick. Six-round pick running back.
Exactly.
That's not somebody that put high draft capital in. And to be honest with you, if you really want to keep it real, he's still kind of fighting for a job on the team.
Exactly.
He has a higher chance than other players, but we've seen 5th, 6th, 7th round players get cut from rosters.
Do yourself a favor.
Work out.
Go back and look at Eno Benjamin's college tape, and then go back and look at Keontae Ingram's college tape. Because it's easy to say, okay, they just drafted this guy. He's automatically the second handcuff. But then when you go back and look at both of their college tapes, to me, I don't know. Eno Benjamin looked, I thought,
the problem with Eno Benjamin is he's had opportunity. He hasn't taken a hold of.
I don't necessarily know that
situation.
He's had.
A lot of
opportunities.
Last year he was
he's really only had significant carries in one game.
But that's the thing, though. I think he's going into his 3rd year. His first season, he was drafted, so he had draft capital, but
he didn't
never play. And it had nothing to do with injury. It was literally just
they said he wasn't ready.
Exactly. The team wasn't ready to put him out there.
They said he wasn't
ready.
The
next year, now you have a year under your belt. In the preseason, he was fighting for snaps with Jonathan Ward.
Yeah, but I
actually think Ward was higher than him on the depth chart. When Chase went out, though, I think Eno actually got more carries. I think it might have been a situation they trusted Ward more, maybe in pass protection or something that they didn't trust Eno in. So Eno did get more carries, but he didn't truly grab the role.
Yeah.
And number one, they did draft Ingram, which again, 6th-round pick, whatever. But now they signed a Daryl Williams.
Yeah.
So it lets me know, to me, they don't really believe Eno has much in them anymore at all.
And there's opportunities to be had because I think what you have to do is, try and tell yourself a story, one that is more plausible than not. Right. So for me, probably my highest owned player is CEH, and immediately when I got into drafts, I think the first time I drafted him, it was in the 7th round. And I understood, the possibility that, Daryl Williams may get re-signed or even Jared McKinnon may get re-signed or they may bring someone in. But at the current state in that offense, going in the 7th round with the players that that were going around him, a guy, again, we were never high on him that first year when he came out, but still he was drafted in the first round.
But you're proving the point when I talk about the ambiguity. People still aren't really sure what to make of CEH.
And that's where you take advantage.
I'm telling you, once August comes around, if they don't add anybody else and CEH is being ran during the training camp or whatever as the first team running back, the ADP is going to go up. So I think that's where the advantage. Just circling back around to the original question.
Examples of that right now.
Yeah, circling back around to the original question. That's where the advantage in drafting early is compared to later. Now, again, Abby drafted way more than us, and for what we've seen, there's not a lot of people drafting. Mm-hmm. So it can kind of be a double-edged sword because in my mind, I think the people that are drafting are people that are
a bit more sophisticated,
confident, and feel like their accuracy. Yeah. So you're competing against people that are also. Yeah. Yeah, probably.
It's a bet. It's a bet on yourself. Yeah. So when I'm drafting right now, I'm betting on myself that I've assessed this situation
better than the other
than someone else, and I just need to be more right than someone else.
Right.
Yeah. And I think there will be a few lottery ticket league winners that from that 7th. Or from the 6th, 7th round to the 10th, 11th round, where you can grab guys and try and get a good share of players that could ultimately really kind of carry your team. So
that's what I'm looking at too, though. But I agree.
So let's stay on drafts for a second because one guy, I think it's the same person in multiple drafts, is drafting 3 tight ends in a row. Now, I don't want to talk about whether that can be successful or not. I know that there have been some people who have talked about it.
But we're talking about FFPC, so it's tight end premium. So tight ends are a little bit more valuable.
Correct. It's a tight end premium league. But what does it say about the nature of the tight end position that a guy can go 3 straight rounds and pick up top-tier tight ends? What does that say about the position?
So what I've gathered, and again, it's just kind of my anecdotal experience from the last few weeks of drafting on FFPC in the Football Guys Championship or Players Championship tournament, is that tight ends really, they're all over the board, okay? Their ADPs have been very fluid from draft to draft. You'll have your average ADP, but I've seen George Kittle go as high as mid-2nd round to as late as, I want to say, mid to late 4th round. I've seen, Pitts go early 2nd to late 3rd. Mark Andrews, 1st or 2nd round. And then when you get to that mid-tier, or that lower tier, I think it's all across the board. And then when you get to that later tier, that sort of kind of, lottery picket tier, you waited on tight end, or maybe, you kind of drafted a safe guy, but you really want that tight end that's going to be able to produce,
right.
It's all across the board. And I think people really have not, figured out who that guy is because it's hard. And historically, we have not done a good job of it anyway. So I don't have an issue with drafting multiple tight ends. Drafting them that early is something that
But drafting
would not
3
do.
in a row, though?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. That I would not do.
You know what's interesting, just kind of listening to what you were saying? I don't think there's much that can occur during an off season or right before a season starts that can really change dramatically the tight ends' ADPs.
Exactly.
So if you're telling me the tight ends are just kind of all over the board, that's probably how it's just going to be indefinitely, and you can kind of look for an edge there, I
mean, I don't know if it'll be indefinitely. I think, you get to a point.
Think about what can happen that'll make a tight end's ADP go up right now.
Not go up, but stabilize, essentially.
So are you saying it's moving around?
Yeah, I'm saying it's fluctuating.
I got you.
So what I've tried to do in terms of drafting early is, okay, what are some tight ends that I feel very confident in, but that I think I can get a really good value? Because the ideal scenario for me is that I fill out my running back and wide receiver and my flex positions, and then I get my tight end afterwards. But a tight end that can produce at a top 5 level. Because I really think you need a top 5 tight end or someone who can produce as a top 5 tight end.
Who are your top
to win
5
the
tight
tournaments.
ends right now?
I can't give that out. This is what.
Okay. Let me ask you. Let me ask you.
It's not put out.
I'll give it. So,
Okay.
and it's not any secret because I'm getting them at an ADP anywhere just below ADP. So, Zach Ertz I really like, and I like Zach Ertz for a couple of reasons.
From the back. Okay.
Yeah, I like Zach Ertz for a couple of reasons. Knowing that,
No, I don't do that.
Okay, all right.
That's actually giving. Your thought.
Okay.
Just list who the top. I really want to know more so the ADP. Who are the top 5 ADP?
Top 5 tight ends. So obviously you got
People
Kelce
mad because they
number
want to
1.
hear your rankings, but oh well. So
You got-
Kelce number.
you have
Because I
Kelce-
thought you were telling me last week Mark Ingram's jumped. Kelce.
Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews.
So
sorry.
yeah, you'll see a couple of drafts maybe I think
So they're
here and
kinda
there
going
where
flip-flop?
Andrews, but for the most part it's Kelce number 1.
Okay.
And then you have Mark Andrews too.
Okay.
And I agree with that because I think, Mark Andrews splits without Lamar. I mean, a lot of that work that he did where he's just
With
going
Huntley?
off was with Huntley and
Yeah.
Johnson. And y'all know I was on Johnson last
You're
year.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
But,
And he's without a job right now. But anyway.
Yeah. That's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, so Kelce, Andrews, and then you have Pitts.
Okay. Pitts is number 3.
Pitts is number 3. And then
Okay.
usually Kittle. And then I think usually TJ Hawkinson.
Hawk. So Hawk
Yeah.
is holding.
Yeah, Hawk is holding.
If Hawk is holding, that means no tight end is really.
But and
Increase their ADP
And I don't
or
want.
value.
I don't mind taking Kelce, but I feel like with every team that I draft Kelce on, it's probably a good bet to make it to the tournament, cash in some way. But I think it's very difficult to like win the tournament because you're giving up one of those elite guys, one of those first rounders. But
So in the chat, we had a long discussion about talent versus situation, and the tight end position is one of those positions that I tend to look at their situation. Dio, like, how do you use like your analytical brain as our tight end whisperer?
Now remember
to determine your tight end.
Now remember when I talk about I prefer talent over a situation, I'm speaking more in dynasty. Because with dynasty, situations can change at the drop of a hat.
and it's subjective.
Everything's
Per day,
subjective. Everything's subjective. But dynasty, a player can be in a good situation today and be in a horrible situation next year. So that's always something that can fluctuate. But in redraft, it's still a situation. I value athleticism in my tight ends because I feel like if you have the athleticism, the only thing you need now then is the targets, the volume, and then Yahtzee, like I said last year.
I 100% agree.
Because if you're not athletic or have the talent, once you get that, if you get a high target share, you're getting it, but they're not excited. You're getting these catches, getting tackled, probably give you 11 points,
And I 100% agree. And the only reason that, and to me, Ertz does not fall in that athleticism category. But
Right.
I will tell you this, from a route running standpoint, from a getting open standpoint, and from what I saw, because I was really worried about Ertz going to.
Well, I got a question. I
With
just made me think about something.
going to Arizona last year, because I just didn't feel like he was really, going to fit in that offense.
Right.
But he really was, in my opinion, Kyler Murray's safety blanket.
Yeah.
So now you add in a Marquise Brown who could really take the top off of defense.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get, a Rondale Moore who's healthy, who's also speed, who defenses have to account for. And you get a guy who defenses really aren't targeting to stop.
So remind me, when Ertz was eating, who were Kyler's other? Was Kyler even playing? 'Cause remember, Kyler was hurt for a long time. Who were the other receiving options there? Because remember, Hopkins was hurt.
Yeah, Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
Kirk.
And
Okay,
then,
Kirk.
yeah.
I forgot about Kirk.
And Wesley.
No, Antoine Wesley.
Antoine Wesley.
Yeah.
'Cause Moore was, I think, hurt. Moore was banged
Something
up for
going
the
on
part of
with
the year.
Moore. Something was going on.
Yeah, he was
Okay,
banged
so I
up
have a question for you.
And
Because-
AJ Green.
And AJ, oh my God. AJ
Y'all know what I think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
AJ
yeah.
Green.
I will not.
So
take AJ.
you listed out the top 5 ADP tight ends.
Yeah.
But then you were about to start listing out your 5. You were going to start from 5 and go to 1, and you said Ertz. So my question to you is, who do you prefer, Ertz or
I
Hawkinson?
prefer Ertz over Hawkinson.
Okay, that was easy.
Just even in the
no,
vacuum.
that's the only question. That's all you got to get. That's
Just
all you
even
gotta
in the
get.
vacuum.
Okay.
Okay. But then it stops there.
Okay.
But I prefer Ertz ADP over Kittle's ADP if he's going to be going in the third round.
Got you.
All right, so it's still early in the season. There's still some holdouts, potential holdouts, contract issues. The big one is Kyler. How do you guys factor in holdouts and contract issues when you're drafting players?
Yeah, so this is a man.
Because that's a big one.
Whatever, people know. So, we got into the discussion about Gronk.
Right.
Okay. To Gronk or not to Gronk.
That's different though. That's retirement.
But to
That's
me,
not holdout.
but it's the same situation. Holdouts, contract situations.
I think it's different though because the
injuries.
holdout is due to a dispute with the team wanting to get paid. Gronk is just how I feel. Like, do I want to come back or do I want
but okay, so
retire?
but will a player actually hold out? Still, in the end result is.
I mean,
are you gonna play
Kyler
or are
to
you not
some
gonna play?
extent is kind of holding out right now, right?
He's holding out, and that's what I'm saying.
Somewhat.
As is Terry McLaurin. He's not in practice either.
Well, Marquise Brown also didn't show up either. A lot of players didn't show up.
I don't think his is a holdout though, is it?
Who knows? Well, he's in the same. He's
I
in the
think
same
Darren
contract
Waller-
year. He's in the same contract year as Mclaurin.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
he knows he basically has this organization by the balls.
Yep.
Right.
Because they gave up so much draft capital to get him.
Yeah.
So
Darren Waller, I think, is gonna hold out too. By the way, like we're not done with this contract issue. Like honestly, the wave prior to the draft, that was the first wave.
But this is where you can take advantage, and it's all based off of risk tolerance. If you're going to tell me that there's a 15% chance that Kyler does not or plays this year, so basically 85% chance that Kyler does not play this year.
I think it's 0% chance he doesn't play.
So what? Say there's an 85% chance that he did not play this year.
85%,
and I'm getting him in the 8th round. I'll take that risk, that 15% chance that he plays every single
85
time.
is kind of low.
Because at the quarterback position, I can just easily get a second.
But I don't think anybody thinks there's any chance whatsoever Kyler might not play.
Okay, but they don't think that. But this is what's going on. You have DeAndre Hopkins.
Are you saying Kyler's value is going down?
His value is going down because
depressed?
because it's not just the fact of the holdout. It's the overall state of the Cardinals. People don't have a good feeling about the Cardinals.
I mean, but that is what it is, regardless.
But you got Hopkins sitting out 6 weeks,
right?
Okay,
which is going to be regardless.
You got them losing Christian Kirk. You got the idea of Kyler being hurt last year and hurting people,
which he probably will get hurt again this year
when they need it.
Yeah,
and then you got the holdout situation. So his value is low. But what people aren't taking into account is that if you're looking for that late round QB who could be number one overall, everyone's talking about Jalen Hurts because guess what? Jalen Hurts right now is in good light. You just added A.J. Brown, okay? Second year in the system. He's got a good offensive line. People know he runs. But he's the sexy pick now, right?
So sexy, that sexy pick stuff, man.
He's the sexy pick right now. He's the guy. He's the target. He's everyone's target for the late round.
I just don't think at the moment his value is being depressed due to the holdout. I think it's a combination of things. I think the other stuff you mentioned by far is weighing down on his value, and I think it should because Hopkins is going to be out those 6 games, regardless of what way you look at it.
I will say this: last year, Kyler Murray was not zeroing in on Hopkins. It wasn't like the year before where like every single ball was going. He was spreading. So what that showed me, but I went back to go look at it. He is advancing as a QB. So now you get a healthy Kyler, who can be a pocket passer and who can run.
Yeah, but he also had Kirk, who's gone. So now you have two weapons that are gone.
You got Marquise Brown.
AJ Green, which is older than he was last year, and we saw the way he looked last year, like 1 foot in the ground.
Yeah, but you bring in a Marquise Brown.
Hollywood is okay. By the way, Hollywood I think is a value. Where's Hollywood going? Is he going late?
I don't know. I don't think he's a value. I do not think he's.
He's not going late.
He's going like in the late 4th round.
Oh, that's not a value.
Is he going that late?
I would have thought.
He's going in the early.
So people are because last year he was going like 8th.
Yeah, the last 2 years I've literally.
So if he's going that high, he's not a value
to draft Marquise Brown.
Yeah, like I got him in the 5th. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, that's too early for me. I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think right now, no, of course, I think my argument really is I don't think there's a true depression in anybody's value that's holding out at the moment. Now, I think once we get into training camp, because remember, training camp is when they can start being fined, right? Once they get into training camp and people are actually missing
Okay, so let me ask you
practices.
This. So we're seeing Debo go into the late 2nd round. Okay, so there's 2 questions to this. One is, where do you personally think he should go? And 2 is, where do you think the fantasy community would have him going if he were not holding out?
I think where he's going now is where he would go regardless of.
Yeah, me too.
But the first question is, I'm not a big Debo advocate this season.
Right.
No, let me take it back because everybody's a value. I think Debo's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
I think wherever he ends up, whether it's with San Francisco or with another team, they're going to utilize him. He's going to score fantasy points.
Yeah.
But I think the way the fantasy community has valued Debo, especially with the rumors, and we got to say it's rumors because we haven't heard it from Debo's mouth, that he doesn't want to be used
as a running back.
Yeah, as a back the way he was used last year. So if he doesn't get those type of touches, which to me are money touches, I think that depresses his value even a little bit more.
But it's not just
he
contract.
only said that though because he knows that running backs don't get paid like receivers, and he does not want to be seen.
Smart.
Well, that's
like
his fault because he called himself a wide back.
Yeah.
Like, why would you say that?
What? How much do wide backs get paid? We
Not
don't know.
Not as much as wide receivers.
We don't know. There's never been one.
Who's the highest paid wide back?
We don't know. There hasn't been one.
Well,
but look, it's not just contract holdouts though. I'm telling you, it's the guys who are looking at retirement. It's also the guys who are hurt. And it's the guys who have legal situations coming up.
Okay, so let me ask you.
So you got Kamara, okay? So Kamara right now, I just drafted Kamara at 211, okay? Didn't feel great about it, but I'm not going to let him slip to the third round. So right now, there's a lot of just sort of kind of unknown regarding his legal situation. And I'm not going to get into like what could happen, what may happen. But say September 7th, regular season comes and we find out, okay, his hearing has been pushed back to after the season. So he's not getting suspended.
Yeah.
What do you think his value is going to be?
See, that's my argument. I don't think anybody's value whatsoever is being hurt by their circumstance.
You don't think Kamara will be going at the back end of the second round? Same thing with Deshaun.
Only Watson and Gronk.
What about you think Kamara would be going at towards the back end of the second, early third round?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think so.
Yeah,
I don't think. The reason I say that is because I still think the majority of fantasy owners don't even realize or not taking into account the possibility of Kamara being
I disagree.
out.
I disagree. I think the guys that are drafting right now, at least in the FFPC, are taking that.
I mean, just from the way I've been observing people talk. Because here's the thing: when people talk about Watson, everybody talks about how many games might he miss. Everybody talks about
and that's taken into account into his ADP.
Yeah. Yes, but I when I see people talk about Kamara, I don't see people attaching that with the how many games could he possibly miss. I don't see people
because nobody knows.
Nobody knows Watson either.
Yeah,
nobody knows Watson either.
Yeah. We'll see.
And again, I think Kamara and Gronk, because we had the long discussion about Gronk on the text message today. I think Gronk, if he was to say I'm back, his value would skyrocket.
So 10th round, smashing that all day.
10th, yeah.
But that's another discussion.
Now, last year, AB, I know that you took the strategy of diversifying a bit. Right.
Yeah.
You knew that you were going to be a volume drafter, and you kind of diversified, like your teams. Yeah. Are you still going to do that this year, or are you going to change it?
Do we got 3 trophies up there? No. I think when it comes to diversifying, I think it's something that I'm still learning. Okay. Yeah. Other high-stake players, I've heard them speak on diversifying, and they are probably more sophisticated and more involved at doing that as far as keeping spreadsheets and having a good sense of, where they are as far as ownership. I don't think that that's for me, but I do think that I want to continue to diversify, but do so in my own way. And that means just kind of having my core players, okay, because I still like to draft in tiers. But really not being afraid to take a guy in the 4th round whose ADP is in the 6th round. Last year I also felt like I got, greedy in drafts as far as, okay, this guy's going in the 6th round. Let me not take him here. Let me just take this, this guy whose ADP is, a round or 2 ahead, even though he's someone that I really didn't want to draft. And so I'm really going to try to avoid that this year. I'm just going to, I'm really going to be going to get my guys.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm basically going to be going to get my guys. So, I'll have a core group of players that really are just going to be my draft pool. And yes, players are always at a value, and I'm always going to try and take into account that if somebody really slips, round and a half past their ADP, like Antonio Gibson, for instance, I at the current moment, I want 0 shares of Antonio Gibson. But if he starts falling into the 7th round, I'll get a share or 2. But I'm going to be very underweight, when it comes to that.
So you're okay with him. You just don't like where he's being taken at the moment.
I'm not even okay with them. Like 7th round to me is kind of getting into the territory where, okay, we're looking at true RBBCs or guys, who we think may be the guy, but it's a very, very questionable situation, and I don't feel confident about who's going to win that job. So for Antonio Gibson, just for me, is the last 2 years I just haven't seen it. I'm not saying that you can't win with him. I'm not saying that he couldn't be productive.
He's only been in the league 2 years though.
Yeah,
so
but
you just never seen it with him.
Yeah, but I have not seen it with him.
Got you.
I have not seen it over the course of a season. I've never felt comfortable putting him in my lineup.
Right.
He's been banged up.
Gibson's
He's been
had
hurt.
some good games though, like some high scoring games.
He's had some good games, but he's not the type of player that I want to lean on. Now, right now his ADP is in the fifth round.
Well, you said the fifth round. I mean, who else is going around there?
I'd rather have
what
Zeke.
Gibson can give you.
I'd rather have Zeke. I'd rather have a number of those wide receivers. I'm not going to go over all of them.
Yeah.
But pretty much almost all those wide receivers that go in the fifth round, I would much rather have.
Right, but if you were
Gibson.
trying to say, I want to get my running back here or I want to get a running back here.
I would wait because you can get running backs very late this year. That's one of the, if you're a fan of like, okay, you really want to do a specific strategy like zero RB or anchor RB, this is a year where you could really, I think, do that. I think it's a year where you can win with almost any strategy given where things are currently at, the current state of the board, but that includes that zero RB because you can get guys, especially when I started off drafting, when I was getting CEH in the seventh round, if he's my RB1 and I, hit somewhere else, I'm set,
But I guess to me, the thing with Gibson is I think people are valuing him near his floor right now. People are valuing him as being injury prone and having somebody's going to share the backfield with McKissick and Brian Robinson, the rookie, and
and his quarterback change, who does not dump it off.
And it's warranted. I'm not saying it's not warranted, but again,
I don't know if it's his floor though.
And I think
because if I were to get Antonio Gibson from last year, who I thought was in a better situation with a quarterback that was more apt to check it down to his running backs, with less competition to fight against. And his head coach not coming out saying that, he's going to be week to week and we're going to split carries, I wouldn't draft him in the fifth round based off of what he did last year.
You draft him later?
I would not touch him.
Gibson was a top. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to know for sure, but Gibson was not. He wasn't less than a running back 2 last year in the draft.
I don't care about
season.
overall numbers. I don't care about like looking at the end of the year and tallying up the numbers. What I care about is points per game and how confident I felt in starting in a particular week.
But points per game is a direct reflection. As long as he's playing the games, it's a direct reflection of total points.
It's an inaccurate stat because if you have a player that you do not trust putting in your starting lineup and you put him on your bench.
But what's the value of the replacement? Who is the other running back that you're going to say, I'm going to bench Gibson for and play this other guy?
It could have been a number of running backs. It could have been Devin Singletary later in the year. It could have been Leonard Fournette the entire year. It could have been a number of guys that you got later on. It could have been Elijah Mitchell. Running backs pop up all the time. What I'm saying is when I was putting in at multiple times last year when you were setting your starting lineup, where Antonio Gibson was being drafted in the second round,
but we're not talking. But that's what I'm saying. We're not talking about him in the second round. Right now, we're talking about him.
I get that, but what I'm saying is players that I draft there, I want them to be set and locked into my starting lineup.
Right, but we're not talking about second round. We're talking about what value have.
I'm talking about the fifth round as well.
If he's being drafted in the fifth round, that means he's being drafted as a running back 2, maybe even a back end running back 2 /
I don't draft back end running
back 3. Because if you're talking about fifth round, you could have easily drafted.
Why would I want to draft him in the fifth round if he's a running back 3?
I'm not talking about what his production. I'm talking about if you're drafting him in the fifth round, you're being drafted as your running back 2 or your running back 3 because most likely you already drafted one other running back prior to that. And if you didn't, that means you went zero running back, and that's still not a bad first running back to have because again, he has produced. Now, consistency might be a question, but honestly, the whole running back landscape is probably questionable.
Which brings me to my point: is that type of player that I do not feel confident in, who's not consistent, I have to struggle with, and whether to start week in and week out. I don't want to draft that type of player in the fifth round.
But again, like I was saying, I feel like he's being valued at his floor. I feel like people.
I don't know. His floor could be the 8th round.
No. Not where he's drafted, but his production. People are drafting him as if he's going to have a mediocre season. And what I'm saying is, first of all, he is talented. We've seen him. We've seen games where he put up 3 touchdowns. Like
people keep saying he's talented. He may have 1 or 2 plays here or there, but as a runner in between the tackles, he does not look talented to me. He's not figured it out.
But if you look at his stats, there's been games where he had very high scored games, like several games. And I know this because I have him on some of my team, and I've seen him do it. So, and again, he wouldn't even have that great of a season last year. So if he produces, again, I think people are scared of McKissick, scared of Robinson. So if he produces at his floor, I think he's 5th, 6th round value. But on the flip end, if he actually does kind of stack those games together where he is doing very well. Let's say the Commanders have a good season. They're in scoring range and they happen to give it to him. You know, he does have pass catching ability because he was a receiver in college. If he does actually produce and have a good season, that 5th round can end up being value for some players. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, my confidence in that is low.
Right.
So I'm not saying that it's not within his realm of possibility, but my issue with that is that my confidence in him doing that is low.
But that's why
I don't want to waste my shares of players that I draft in the 5th round on Antonio Gibson. Is what I'm saying.
Right, but okay. So the alternative you mentioned was Zeke. I don't think people are really confident in Zeke.
I'm confident in Zeke in the 5th round.
Right. Okay.
So I'm not saying,
I guess you're talking about from your point of view.
I'm talking about
okay.
my point of view. I'm not saying that, yes, it's well within the realm of possibility that Antonio Gibson outscores Zeke. But what I have to do as a player, getting back to Chris's main question as far as, okay, how am I going to be diversifying? This is a good example. I'm going to be way underweight on Antonio Gibson. And if I see Zeke in the 5th round, I'm probably going to be more overweight on the amount of times that I take, as far as my 5th round draft pick.
So I guess for me then, to answer your question, and I guess we kind of allude slightly to it in our just recent discussion, is I am diversifying, maybe even diversifying more so, because I truly believe in tier-based drafting. As far as I have pockets of players that I kind of put in the same tier, and I will usually, we're not really talking about dynasty, but I'll usually try to maybe get the last person in that tier that's on the board,
Let's talk about that for a second. Like, explain to me what tier-based drafting versus a true ranking is, because we keep getting requests for rankings. Tell me the difference between tiers and just ranking players.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like, okay, let's really simplify it. Let's talk about quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. So if I was to say, okay, if I was to rank the quarterbacks, I'd probably say maybe, and this is arbitrary, this isn't my true rankings, but Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, sorry. Mm-hmm. But then if I was to say, okay, I want to tier draft it, and say I have those 4 quarterbacks very, very close in value. Again, I'm not saying this is how I see it, but say I do have them like almost, splitting hairs, I just have them ranked because I have to, then for me that would be a tier. And then when it comes to drafting, I'm going to try to skip the first 3 of those guys that are drafted and hopefully end up with that 4th guy, or if the 3rd guy, however way it plays out. So that's kind of tier drafting, where it's like I have all these groups of players that I kind of value. The first guy in that tier, the last guy in the tier, probably not much of a difference. So when I end up drafting, because I'm not really targeting certain players, again, that's why I say I'm going to diversify. I don't really care which player it is. It's just that the player in that tier a player in that tier, I just want to make sure I have on my team. So that's kind of how I draft.
And this is why
I plan to draft this year.
Yeah, and I probably definitely lean more tier, but I also don't really draft off necessarily rankings, because then I get into a situation where even though I may have Antonio Gibson ranked as the 24th, 25th, whatever running back off the board, I just kind of went on a 15-minute discussion about how I really wanted to be underweight on him. Mm-hmm. So rankings can put you in a situation where you're forced to take a player when you really don't want him. It also, I think, can sometimes narrow, your view on who to select. If you're looking at rankings, say you go 0 RB, okay, and you're looking at rankings, you can get to a situation where, okay, I've gotten 4 wide receivers and I really need a running back. And then you look at that ranking, you're like, okay, this is the next running back. But then you bypass a wide receiver that's still very elite, in an overall maybe ranking. He's in a much higher tier.
Yeah.
That's where it can kind of hurt you. So, rankings can be helpful to kind of give you a general sense. But, I think you really need to take a lot of different things.
It's crazy. Like, I don't even draft with the rankings anymore.
No.
And it's crazy because I've been playing fantasy football since 2009, right? And the very first time I played, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I didn't even know what rankings were.
Yeah.
Just pick players, like, right? It's football. But then after a couple of years, when I started to get a little bit more versed, I started doing rankings. And I did rankings literally year in and year out for all my fantasy drafts. But it's kind of crazy, and I really don't know what the pivot point was. But the last couple years, I don't draft for rankings whatsoever at all. Like it's like I understand the values as is, and it is what it is. So I'm not even saying it's the best approach, because I know some people need their rankings or need their tiers kind of listed out for them to see it. But I really believe value, especially in a high stakes tournament where you're trying to win a grand prize amongst thousands of people. I think the true value is in how you build your team.
Yeah,
I think team building is way more important than rankings. And like Abby said, I think Abby said it last year too, that the true way to determine somebody's rankings is when they're on the clock and they have two options.
Right.
Who are they picking?
Yeah.
Because you can BS your way and say, this is how I got them listed out.
Yeah.
But if you have Gibson ranked number 26 and you're at the draft and then the number 26 option comes up, Abby's probably going to be like, what's the 27 guy look like?
I know I have Dalvin Cook ranked as a number 3 overall pick, period.
Okay, is he not going there?
3, 4 between him and Justin Jefferson. No, he goes at the back end of the 12th. Okay.
On the first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, yeah, back end of the first. So I remember when I first started drafting, the entire time I'm thinking, okay, is there something that I'm missing here?
Right.
Because this is what the current ADP is, and then I look at other rankings.
So real quick, I don't mean to interject, but just real quick.
Yeah.
The way, and I'm asking you this question, or even you, Chris, the way FFPC determines their ADPs at this exact moment, where do they gather that information?
I have no idea.
No clue.
Because what you're actually bringing up now, like, why is Dalvin Cook ADP at the back end of the 12?
I don't know how they determine their starting. I would assume they determine their starting rankings based off of last year's production. So I think a lot of
then why C-Mac wouldn't be 2 then?
Say what?
Right? C-Mac wouldn't be 2 then.
Yeah, but eventually, they work their way up.
Okay.
Yeah, eventually they work their way up. Because, when I first started drafting, C-Mac was going 5, 6, 7 overall. Now he's kind of solidified himself.
FFPC, if y'all are listening to this episode, please shoot us an email or tweet. Explain exactly how y'all find out. Because we know by the end of the summer, ADP is determined about how everybody's drafted, right?
Yeah.
But when people are standing at the gates waiting to get in, like Abby, how did y'all determine what ADP is?
But that's the advantage, because...
I agree.
We'll see, because, not to kind of get into the whole Dalvin Cook discussion, but...
You just shot Dalvin Cook's ADP up by 2 spots.
No, he's
you literally did that in real time.
I feel like it's going to get there regardless. I think it's coming up anyway. But I like him as a really strong, positive TD, regression candidate.
Why do you like him, Coach?
Because I think he just didn't score. If he would have scored more TDs last year, he would not be going at the back end of the 12. All he needs to do is score more TDs. And based on the amount of touches that he gets, you can score TDs. And it's not hard to get his handcuff if you want that safety. Like we talked about before, I don't project any running back for 16, 17 games total. So I'm not, I already, that's kind of built in. Yeah. And wide receivers deep. I do like getting one of the elite wide receivers, and Justin Jefferson is probably about the wide receiver I feel the most confident about. That's
pretty much consensus, ain't it?
Yeah. So it's hard, So usually I'll if I had the third overall, I'm probably taking Justin Jefferson more oftentimes than not. But then after that, I feel very, very comfortable and confident in just taking Cook afterwards. I'll mix it. I'll probably go Kupp just because otherwise I'm not getting Kupp shares, and I like Kupp. And he's in that tier, and knowing that I can kind of get, Cook later in drafts.
So Jefferson's going over Kupp right now?
I think Kupp is going over him, but I prefer Jefferson by quite a bit.
I haven't made my mind up on Jefferson yet. I'm not saying he's not a great talent or he's not valuable. I just don't know if I really am as high on him as what it seems like the rest of the community is. But it's something I got to think through. Again,
we're at the very beginning of draft season. Let's talk about the DNA of a tournament-winning team, right? You've reached the mountaintop twice. Dial, you were a big part of, his success, and you guys kind of draft together. I know what the chat is. Talk about, the anatomy of a tournament-winning team and what you need to kind of reach the end goal.
I'll let him answer. Hey, he's the only one that knows. 2 times, so he can give you both ways.
I think it definitely starts with a strong draft, and how you define that, I think, is important. You're not going to hit on all 20 picks. You may, but I think that's very, very hard to do. So, we talked about one aspect, which is having, I think, a tight end that could produce at a top 5 finish. And you may be able to do it without it. Again, this is how what I've seen in years past. And
no, they want to know how you did it. How did you do it?
So I really do feel like you need a top 5 tight end. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to draft a top 5 tight end.
Get one somehow.
Get a top 5 tight end.
End up with one.
Yeah, and based off years past, there may be one or two guys that may kind of come out of nowhere, and we're all going to speculate and guess and try and get on top of those guys, and that'll be where I diversify, so that I can see if I can try and get that guy and keep we keep our ears to the streets and on the Twitter to try to figure that out. But I think that's one, and that's key. 2 is I really think when it comes to the quarterback position, you need to find a guy that you can get late that can produce QB1 numbers. I think if you waste an early draft pick on QB, you are really taking away one of those key position spots that is really needed. We talked about consistency earlier. That plays a role in the tournaments because it's 3 weeks of total points to determine who's the overall winner. So getting a guy that has a spike week here and then 2 duds there, may not help you out as much as someone who can get you 3 consistent, 15 to 20 point weeks. So those are the guys that I really want as part of my core, So I think if you're, wasting I won't say wasting, but using a fourth round pick on that, it can be tough. It can be done. They did it last year, but I think it's very tough to do that. Actually, did they do it last year? No, they won with Burrow last year.
Burrow, yeah.
Okay, so maybe it has not been done. So I really look to try and get that quarterback late. Sometimes I'll play around with it if it's the 6th, 7th round, especially if I'm around the turn, because I may just get that quarterback at the 6th round, and then there's still some guys there that I feel confident in the 7th round. And then the key is finding that Stephon Diggs, that Cooper Kupp. I think running backs, we can we're gonna find them on the waiver wire. They're going to be guys that we've never heard of, or guys that we never suspected, I should say, that are going to emerge. And those guys are going to be on the waiver wires. So you can win there. But finding that wide receiver in, say, the 5th to 7th round who can be the true wide receiver 1 is key.
Right. So
that's what we're kind of focused in on this year, is finding out who that wide receiver is. And we have like a number of different candidates for that. But I will say this year I feel like is unique because the quote unquote running back dead zone, I feel like there are a lot of, potential guys who can perform at an elite level and be a part of a championship winning team. And in that zone that, we're calling where we're looking for that wide receiver 1, I feel like there are actually a lot of landmines. I feel like a lot of people are throwing darts, rightfully so, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of duds. So I think it's, a wide receiver dead zone in essence. Like, you're really going to have to be looking for the guy who can be consistent and who can be that true number 1 wide receiver. Right. So that's kind of part of it. And then Dale can probably speak on like drafting just being one aspect, and then basically everything else that kind of goes into like winning the overall tournament.
I mean, I haven't won it yet, so I can't speak on it at all. But from observation, because I've seen Abby literally do it twice. Everything he's saying obviously is valid. That's what works. I do think that again, and I mentioned this a little earlier, team building is extremely important. You have to realize when you get into those tournaments, it's like you have to have this hot streak. I mean, first get into the tournament, but once you get in there, regardless of how good your team is, your team has to have this 3-week hot streak where you just have hopefully most of your players having one of their best weeks of their season 3 times in a row, or having like Abby had a couple years ago that game where Kamara scored like 6 touchdowns. Just having that crazy week that happens to be in that 3-week sprint.
You need guys that are capable of that.
Right, and you need guys that have that capability. So I do think people kind of they allocate some of their resources to the wrong places sometimes, and maybe everybody's motivation is different. It's funny to me because I'm not even trying to brag, but I've won my share of leagues, you know, that 12-team insulated league. But I never really think of that as much of a win because I'm trying to win the tournament. But there's people that do take those league wins, and you know they'll probably say, you know, I won, I'm a league champion, you know, whatever. You know, that's nothing to me. But there might be people that's their goal. They want to win that. I don't even know how much the money is for 350.
It's significant. Yeah,
It's what?
It's significant.
Yeah, I mean, so once you win that, they're probably like, I did it, you know, and that's fine. But for me, if you're trying to win the big tournament, number one, I don't think late wide receivers can really get it done for you. I think those are more stopgaps. If you need somebody to fill a roster spot, you know, for a certain week, put them in there. But if you're depending on finding one of those late wide receivers to end up being a big contributor, I think that's bad process. Because historically, the wide receivers that score the most, they're kind of consistent. You know, some people might go from wide receiver 3 to 1 or 1 to 2 or, you know, vice versa. But it's hard to go from wide receiver 6 to wide receiver 2. You know, and on the flip end, like Abby was just saying earlier about running backs, you have these running backs that nobody's drafting right now. Nobody even knows their name. Yet by the time week 14 come around, he's a hot waiver wire pickup. He ends up winning weeks like Rex Burkhead last year and Rashad Penny last year. Justin Jackson, Dearness, you know, it wasn't during the tournament week, but you know, he's somebody that could win you a week, you know. I think people, if they truly understand that, so first of all, people first understand that we don't know anything.
We forgot about Cordero too.
Yeah. But he let me down during the tournament, but whatever. If people first had to understand, we really truly don't know anything. I like to say embrace the chaos, embrace the uncertainty. So if you go in with that mindset, then you'll then say, okay, I can take stabs at a wide array of options because I don't know, one of these options could actually hit. And I just didn't realize it at the time, you know? So I think they think about it that way. Quarterbacks, I'm not sure. I mean, Abby won the thing twice, so maybe I should just listen to what he just said. But I do think you can get one of the higher end quarterbacks early and still win. Because I think it's just how well they do in that last stretch. Now, of course, you know, if you do get a later quarterback, you can get that value. But the thing about it with value to me is just because somebody is drafted at value in an early round doesn't mean that person's going to hit. You know, you have these guys that we like now during draft season, and then come during the season, like Ayuk last year, it's like does nothing for you. So you probably were excited, like I got Ayuk in the 6th round. Shoot, you didn't even really want him on your team, or Roby Anderson. You know, people like that. So,
and this is the tough part about it too, is because you know, somebody like Ayuk, I'm gonna have to try and fit in some shares.
Yeah, I like Ayuk this year.
And it's not because of, you know, the way the things currently sit that I think he is going to produce consistently or produces a wide receiver too. It's that anything can happen. Like you said, we don't know. So it is well within the realm of possibility that come week 15, 16, 17, Debo is out with an injury.
And Ayuk just has a great season.
And then Ayuk is this, you know, clear-cut wide receiver 1. So, and this is kind of where it comes down to rankings, and you know, when we talked about diversifying, like he's included in that kind of core because I think based off of talent, you know, he could potentially make it happen. That I have to somehow incorporate. But if I were to put him in my rankings, he would be very, very low, and I would almost never get him.
Right. And it's kind of the same way. Like when we were looking back last year during the season, we were seeing Kupp, and we were like, you know, why didn't we have more shares of Kupp? You know, like why did we not see this happening? And it was one of those things where, Kupp last year, you say back in wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. But again, because he has that. He's in that range, he could still show you can be a wide receiver 1.
That's where I want to diversify.
And we should have, that's what I'm saying. We should have diversified. Say, look, he has a chance. Let's take a stab because we don't know.
And it's easy in retrospect, but guess what? We gotta like learn.
No, you gotta stay ready.
You gotta learn from what you know previous mistakes, and not take last year and say, okay, this is what we gotta do this year.
Right.
But understand that that's well within the, that situation may pop up again, and look for those types of situations. Look for those types of wins. And the same thing, the Diggs the year before. Look for those situations where, okay, this is a wide receiver 1 on a team, with an up and coming quarterback that really, people were, no one was on Josh Allen, and this is a younger wide receiver that got traded and did well, but didn't, no one saw this in the realm of possibility. And he was going in the 6th, 7th round. Yeah. And look what happened. And there are, you're going to laugh, but hey, you can look at the Giants as, an example of that. That's cheap. It costs you nothing.
It costs you something.
Also, and I guess I shouldn't really give this out, but I'll just say it anyways. I think people really need to strongly look into finding edges, however way possible. Just something that you can squeeze out an extra penny out of, because in this tournament every point counts. You don't want to look back, and it happened to me last year. I don't know if it happened to y'all, but you don't want to look back when playoffs are about to start and look at your teams like, damn, if I would have scored 10 more points, I would be in the playoffs. Where it's like, dang, and then you start thinking back, like, what roster decision did I make to mess this up, type of thing.
That's why I'm so big on, like, okay, you tell me that a player scored X amount of points, or a player, averaged, X amount of points per game. And if it's one of those top end guys, he was in your lineup every week. But if it was one of those mid to lower tier guys, how many times did you confidently start him? So to me, those points don't mean a lot. Matter. Yeah. It didn't matter because they were on your bench.
Right.
So you either gotta, realize, you either got to be better at start sits.
You got to be able to tell the future, basically.
So sometimes it's hard because you can look at those year-end stats and really, I think to some degree they're misleading. But
I got you.
All right, guys, that's it for this week.
That's it.
I do. That's it, man.
We're not gonna go over divisions.
We're supposed to talk about divisions.
We don't have to. We could do it.
Let's save it for next week.
Okay.
Also, I also want to say this for next week too. I do want to talk about these tiers, where are the breaks in the receiver tier? So who's the last guy in your tier 1?
So we can't do that. Somebody asked me today on Twitter, and we talked about it last year. I think at some point we'll put out not rankings, but a tier. I actually put it out there.
But we should do it to where it shows the number 1 tier, who's the top guy at the tier, and then the bottom guy at the tier. Then leave everything else in between blank.
Oh, just give
and let
a
people
teaser?
and just let everybody else.
Whatever, you're the showrunner. Whatever you decide, we're just here. We just talk.
Multiple choice question?
I know. So, dynasty sleepers.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to take.
Let me get my pencil.
I don't want to take full credit for this. Somebody actually put me on this on one of my dynasty leagues.
All right.
And usually I don't even really look at tight ends as far as rookies. But Greg Dulcich for the Broncos.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned him in the chat. I think y'all should be looking at him.
Yeah.
He apparently is one of the better receiving options that was in the draft at tight end. The team was very excited to draft him. He's one of their first drafts. Remember, they didn't have a first-round pick. I don't even think they had a second-round pick.
Who drafted him?
The Broncos.
Okay.
So I think he was their first draft pick. If not the first, he was one of their top 2. Again, very, very good athletic profile. And remember what I was saying earlier, the tight ends, being athletic is the big key. Once you have that, all that's left is just getting the opportunity.
Yeah.
Greg Dulcich. Also look at the Eagles undrafted free agent.
Oh, yeah.
Kennedy Brooks.
Yeah.
They paid him a good amount of money. Y'all know how the Eagles are with their running back situation. It just it could be
back.
random. Sanders is in the contract year. He might not come back. Now he is an undrafted free agent, so he can be cut tomorrow.
Yeah.
But he's just somebody out there. I don't know if I talked about Danny Gray last week. If I didn't, I wanted to. I'm really excited about Danny Gray with the 49ers.
Yeah.
3rd round draft pick. He might be their field stretcher, 4.3 speed. Went to SMU. They like him a lot. They like him a whole. From what I read, they like him a lot. So don't be surprised if he ends up being a thing, especially with Trey Lance's arm. Trey Lance can really put it out there. I know you're not a big Trey Lance guy, but if Trey Lance can put it out there, he fits very well with Trey Lance's skill set. So,
all right, that's it. Anything else, guys? Anything to pub?
Just stay ready.
All right, guys. Please like, rate, subscribe.